In the shadow of 1985, Saudi Arabia unleashed a torrent of oil onto the world market. Imagine the rumble of oil rigs cranking into overdrive, production soaring from 2 million barrels a day to 5 million, the air thick with the stench of spilled crude. Prices didn't just drop, they plummeted by half from late 1985 to early 1986. And that collapse? It hammered the final spike into the coffin of the Soviet Union's finances, edging a wobbling economy toward bankruptcy. Food shelves grew bare, the chill of hunger gripping the streets, while military might melted under unsustainable costs. By 1991, this oil vortex triggered the empire's shatter, a historical scar etched into Vladimir Putin's very soul. Now, that nightmare claws its way back to haunt him anew. We're zeroing in on the brutal reality of a $36 per barrel threshold. Ever wondered if Putin's iron grip on power could shatter like glass? Prepare to feel the tremors as his shale foundation crumbles under oil's unrelenting pressure. In the war's initial fury, Russia's grip on high oil prices shielded it from sanctions' bite. But the world's economic tide shifted, feel the icy sting of a price cap clamping down, sanctions tightening like a noose, while global supply fears rippled through markets. This agonizing truth shoved Putin to dispatch his loyal ally, Kirill Dmitriev, across oceans to Miami for covert peace talks. Russian crude tumbled below a perilous line. Without this upheaval, Russia's oil might have fetched $65 a barrel, defying Western chains. Yet, now? Reports scream that Russia claws to offload its oil at a mere $36 per barrel, an unreachable dream. Grasp the gut punch, a $29 per barrel revenue hemorrhage. Not just numbers, this is $29 ripped straight from Putin's war coffers with every single barrel. Picture Russia's daily exports at 5 million barrels, that's a $145 million daily drain from Putin's vaults. Annually? Roughly $52 billion evaporated. Dmitriev's Miami mission might shield Putin from reliving the 1985 meltdown, all without inking a single peace deal. Close that $29 chasm now, or watch this gaping budget void drag Putin into a peace so humiliating, he'd taste ash on his tongue. The bend or break moment looms. What twist will expose Putin's hidden desperation next? That shocking $52 billion annual drain, that's the brutal math behind Putin's nightmare. A daily hit of $145 million, $29 stolen per barrel of oil. This forces him to dodge a humiliating peace, or risk repeating the 1985 Soviet collapse. His economic empire teeters, crumbling under the weight of war's unending costs. Desperate to avoid submission, he turns to secret games in Miami. Picture the cold, sterile hum of conference rooms, the scent of polished mahogany mingling with cigar smoke, the clink of expensive glasses as deals warp reality. But what if his last defenses shatter? Can China's distant shore save him from the abyss? Major Russian energy giants, like Gazprom and Rosneft, are faltering, profits plummeting. Their shadow fleet of rusting, uninsured tankers, sinks under crushing waves of sanctions. Putin clung to two fierce strategies, to defy the West's icy grip. First, he pivoted east, flooding China and India with cheap oil. As Western buyers vanished, these nations gulped it hungrily. But now, Russia's position weakens. Those buyers sense blood in the water. They slash orders dramatically, prices tumble. China's smog-choked ports, once bustling with Russian ships, now echo with silence. India's humid docks, heavy with spice-laden air, reject the dirty cargo. Putin's leverage slips away like sand through fingers. The tactile sting of betrayal. It's real, as buyers humiliate him by cutting deep. His second gambit. That infamous shadow fleet. A flotilla of ancient, hazardous vessels, meant to dodge sanctions. No insurance. No Western eyes. They sailed dark seas, creaking under waves, fueled by desperation. But this too crumbles. New sanctions weave a tighter net. Financial bans, secondary threats, terrify even Asian banks. Those Chinese and Indian financiers. They shudder, fearing the U.S. wrath. Gazprom and Rosneft's earnings. Dismal, billions lost. Vital funds for war machines. Evaporated. Putin's chips to sidestep peace. Gone. Moscow's fortress against negotiation. Cracked open. Only one desperate play remains. Dmitriev's hidden Miami rendezvous. This screams his economy's defeat, the war's bitter end. Layer in the war's staggering load. Military outlays. $1 billion daily, per some estimates. That balloons to over $360 billion yearly. Add the $52 billion oil hemorrhage, plummeting profits at Gazprom and Rosneft, escalating combat costs. Putin's coffers can't keep pace. The rift between his grand facade and savage truth grows to a chasm. Citizens taste the deception, a sour tang on their tongues, as economic storms howl louder. But will this force his hand? Will humiliation come crashing down? What unimaginable twist lurks in the shadows? Is this the moment everything shatters? As we uncovered Putin's accounts struggling beneath the crushing weight of $360 billion in yearly war expenditures, a staggering $52 billion hemorrhaged from oil revenue, and plummeting profits at Rosneft and Gazprom, the abyss between Moscow's propaganda facade and brutal economic truth has never yawned wider. Ever wondered how a man once projecting ironclad control now scrambles in panic, his empire teetering on the edge of collapse? Picture the chill of a Miami dusk, where palm fronds whisper secrets, and the salty air masks the stench of desperation. That's where Vladimir Putin, cornered by a tide of economic ruin, turned to a shadowy figure not for glory, but survival. This isn't just diplomacy, it's a gamble that could humiliate the tyrant who swore war ended on his terms. But brace yourself, because the twist beneath the secrecy shifts everything. With every sunrise, the Russian people awaken to a harsher dawn, their leader's illusions shattering like fragile glass. Can you feel the icy fear creeping in, as public faith erodes, leaving Putin no choice but to negotiate from weakness? This ruin forces him to the bargaining table, his selection of emissaries screaming a message of utter despair. From a criminology lens, Kirill Dmitriev's rise screams desperation, a signal so loud it echoes through the corridors of power. At 50, he's no relic, young, seasoned by years studying and working in America, his mind a bridge between worlds. As head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, or RDIF, Dmitriev embodies the banker who dances with danger. Paired with Steve Witkoff, the real estate titan and strategist, these discussions treat conflict like a cold transaction, wars bartered, lives commodified. Who is this Kirill Dmitriev, entrusted with such perilous talks? Imagine the sting of 2022 sanctions from the U.S. Treasury, branding him a Putin confidant and crippling the RDIF. That damning label rings out, the RDIF, a notorious slush fund for President Vladimir Putin, epitomizing Russia's kleptocratic web. These Miami rendezvous aren't mere peace bids, they're frantic grabs to safeguard personal riches, securing kleptocracy's throne. Dmitriev stands at the system's pulsing core. And the shock deepens. His wife, TV presenter Natalia Popova, entwines with Putin's daughter Katerina Tikhonovova as close pals and collaborators, sealing his place in the inner sanctum, a familial nexus of power. Dispatching this lightning rod figure stateside, braving U.S. hostility for Ukraine's fate, exposes Putin's playbook, utterly depleted, no contingency remains. Amid risks, Dmitriev brims with optimism, boasting unprecedented favor. We feel that Russia's position is truly being heard. This isn't diplomatic fluff, it's a subtle plea to Trump's orbit, hoping to evade current U.S. pressures and dictate terms under a fresh administration. Yet, here's the gut-wrenching twist, Ukraine's awareness of these talks ignites outrage, their leaders sensing betrayal in the humid Miami dealings, where American envoys waltz with the enemy, the faint splash of ocean waves underscoring whispers of treachery. Can Putin sustain this facade when his closest ally blurts hope for a sympathetic ear? Or is this the moment his grip slips entirely? Stay tuned, as we delve into the raw demands of that 28-point draft, where victory's mask hides vulnerability. Kirill Dmitriev, much more than a mere technocrat, stands deeply embedded in Vladimir Putin's inner circle, a core player in the family's ruling regime. Sending such a polarizing figure to America for clandestine talks on Ukraine, braving enormous risks, screams one undeniable truth: Putin has exhausted every alternative strategy. No fallback. No escape hatch. This gamble exposes the Kremlin's sheer desperation, a leader cornered by relentless economic chokeholds that echo history's darkest warnings. Flashback, picture the Kremlin's cavernous halls in 1985, where stale cigar smoke mingled with the sharp crackle of outdated telex machines, and the chill of Siberian wind seeped through heavy curtains, reminding Putin even then that oil's plunge had prices plunging the Soviet Union into chaos, mirrored today's turmoil. That icy grip on his psyche fuels his nightmares now, as prices crash again. Can you imagine Putin's fury boiling inside? His most loyal envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, exudes unprecedented confidence in these Miami meetings, boldly declaring that Russia's voice at last resonates in the West. Not just empty words. This confession from the adversary who mocks American might reveals a chilling ploy. Putin seeks refuge under a future Trump presidency, slipping free from Biden's iron sanctions to dictate his twisted terms. But plummeting oil prices below $36 a barrel? That's $29 ripped from every barrel, stolen from his war machine. 5 million barrels daily? A $145 million hemorrhage, soaring to $52 billion annually. Gazprom and Rosneft teeter on collapse. Profits evaporating like mist over frozen tundras. No wonder Dmitriev's on this mission, he knows the 1985 ghost haunts Putin's every step. What lurid secrets lie in this 28-point draft, whispered in Miami's opulent suites, where the scent of saltwater breezes crashes against gilded walls and silk sheets rustle like veiled threats. Designed to redefine Ukraine's fate and mend fractured US-Russia bonds, it shields Putin's red lines. First, annex those seized lands permanently, stamping victory in ink while blood stains the borders. Second, cripple Ukraine's army, shackling its sovereignty in chains of dependence. Third, demand sanctions erasure, fuel for Dmitriev's kleptocratic empire to slither back into the global bloodstream. Fourth, force the West to block NATO's creep east, curbing troops like a noose tightening on European freedoms. Rhetorical question cuts like a blade: if Putin's vaults overflowed, would he huddle in secrecy, begging scraps from Trump's orbit? No. He'd thunder victories on conquered soil, not skulk toward humiliating bargains. Yet here he is, economy cratering, shadow fleets of rusty tankers sinking under sanctions weight, China and India turning icy shoulders. Dmitriev's own words betray the facade: we feel our stance echoes truly. A bridge to Trump's camp? Or a desperate leap to escape? This draft crowns Putin's delusion of glory, an international pact masking failure. But Clinton's shadow looms. Here's the twist: Zelensky sensed the deceit, Ukrainian hearts pounding as leaks hinted at betrayal, forcing Kyiv to brace like warriors in the fog of dawn. Unaware that Putin's peace mirage could shatter alliances. What seismic ripples will this unleash next? Stay tuned, that bombshell revelation threatens to ignite global retaliations. In the shadowy halls of Miami's opulence, where Putin's illusions of triumph crumbled under the weight of crushing reality, a desperate gambit unfolded that signaled defeat rather than dominance. Yet, this clandestine summit in the humid air of Florida's coast sent shockwaves that isolated Ukraine, leaving them tasting betrayal like salty ocean spray against clenched fists. Imagine the sting. Ukrainian leaders, their eyes narrowing at the unwelcome whispers, realized America might be cutting deals over their blood-soaked lands. Did Russia just bypass Ukraine in a cold maneuver, leaving them fuming and cornered? The anger boiled over, palpable in the urgent calls and slammed doors of Kiev's war rooms. Zelensky's meeting with Trump's envoy vanished into thin air, postponed like a forgotten promise on November 19 in Turkey. Before that, Ukraine's defense minister, Rustem Umerov, huddled with the envoy, but piecing together Russia's hidden agenda after Miami shattered what little trust remained. It felt like being stabbed in the dark, with Kyiv sensing they were pawns in a game where Moscow negotiated their fate. And why wouldn't they rage? Russian tactics screamed arrogance, hurling Ukraine's sovereignty aside. But here's the brutal twist: Ukraine didn't just seethe, they struck back with cunning patience. Their master plan simmered beneath the surface, a relentless strategy to erode Putin's grip from within. Force him to the table through internal storms, they'll say, stripping away his so-called red lines like peeling rotten fruit. If Russia's coffers keep hemorrhaging. That 28-point fantasy from Kirill Dmitriev evaporates, exposing Putin's bluffs. Ukraine's edge? Concrete evidence of Moscow's decay, fodder for humiliation. Visualize the human toll, grieving families clutching photographs, funeral dirges echoing in snow-covered streets, while high payouts for soldiers' widows drain the Kremlin's veins. Each loss tears at Russia's social fabric, a cacophony of wailing and whispered rebellions. Tanks, once symbols of might, now idle in freezing factories. Giants like Urovagonzavod, Russia's premier tank maker, facing layoffs of 10% of workers, even 50% in some forsaken halls, shriek under credit crunches and funding voids. The war machine grinds to a halt, smelling of rust and desperation, its clangs turning to eerie silence. What if these cracks widen into an abyss, swallowing Putin's regime whole? The economic noose tightens around Putin's neck, as Russia's largest tank manufacturer, Urovagonzavod, plans brutal layoffs, 10% across the board, even 50% in key departments. Credit crunch and funding shortfalls scream one truth: the war machine's gears have snapped. Imagine the sting of hopelessness in those factories, the echo of slamming doors as workers pack up their tools, the acrid smell of oil-stained hands washed clean for the last time. Is this the brutal sign of Russia's crumbling empire, her industrial heart stuttering to a halt? All these crushing pressures tilt the battlefield balance. Time, my friends, is biting back at Putin. But Ukraine watches like a hawk circling prey. What force could shove Putin to the Miami bargaining table if not the undeniable exhaustion on Russian fronts and home turf? Kiev's gamble? Waiting for the people of Russia to strip away the illusion, to feel the gnawing bite of truth in their empty bellies. The real beast driving Putin's Miami betrayal isn't faceless numbers on a chart, it's the raw, visceral hunger clawing at Russian stomachs. From a wartime frenzy with an economy in flames, Russia's plunged into industrial meltdown. The war beast gorged on civilian resources to thrive. Now, it's turning inward, fangs bared, devouring its own flesh. At the center? Elvira Nabiullina, the Kremlin's sharpest technocrat, tangled in an unwinnable web. One hand grips Putin's endless war coffers, draining gold without end. The other battles the raging inflation her own policies fuel, a fiery whirlwind drowning the fragile economy. Forced to slam interest rates sky-high, to 16%, maybe 17%, to leash the beast, what message does this howl to Russians? No loans for dreams, no credits for futures, no homes to call yours. Feel the chill of that 17% shadow, like icy chains locking away hope. And Nabiullina's own words? A dagger to Putin's chest. In the State Duma, she warned of a slowdown stretching into 2026, over a year of stagnation, growth forsaken. Her confession: sanctions from the West? Negative shocks impossible to predict, adaptation a foggy mire. Politely coded, it's a scream, they're lost in the dark, no map, no control. We've got Nabiullina crushing the economy under slowdown guises to tame inflation, a vicious loop where choking the air kills more than it saves. War demands? Explosive. Inflation uncontrolled. Everyday Russians and industry suffocating in no-fuel zones. Ultra-high rates blocking any breath of credit. Economy slowing till 2026. Nabiullina admits, West sanctions? Unpredictable chaos, adaptation drawn out. The twist? Nabiullina isn't just stalling, she's exposing Putin's illusion. Her predictions reveal a leader who can't halt the hemorrhage, a regime shattering like brittle glass. But wait, what if this admission is a calculated leak, bait for internal mutinies? The Kremlin's walls might crack wider than we think. Could this be the spark igniting Russian streets against a failing emperor, or mere theater to delay the inevitable collapse? And how long before the hunger riots turn blueprints into barricades, forcing Putin to flee not just negotiations, but escape altogether? What shocking betrayal lurks next in his circle? Stay tuned, the endgame hinges on a rotting throne. Nebula's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. She admitted, we're not in control. We don't know what to do. Sanctions hit us hard, a negative force we can't shake. Adaptation drags on. It's a vicious cycle. Nebula crushes the economy to fight inflation. But Putin floods it with money for his endless war. What horror waits next? Imagine the cold bite of unpaid bills piling up. The rumbling growl of empty stomachs at dinner tables. The sting of lost wages burning like frostbite on fingers too frozen to grip a paycheck. Putin's money-printing frenzy spins out of control. Printed cash ignites inflation like wildfire. So, what's the fallout? The civilian economy plunges. Defense titans sink deeper. This erodes trust in Putin's grip on power. The crisis strikes where it hurts most. His loyal base cracks. Not the Moscow opposition, shouting in the streets, but state-dependent workers in rattling factories. Public servants clinging to hollow promises. And the colossal Russian Railways family, 800,000 strong. These were his silent supporters, buying into stability. Now, their world unravels. Enter the shadow unemployment trap. No open firings to spark outrage. Just forced unpaid leaves. Salaries slashed, vanishing like smoke. In August 2025, Putin faced the cameras. He downplayed it all. Claimed only 200,000 at risk. But 2 months later, in October, his labor ministry flipped the script. Over 254,000 now teetering. A brutal slap to Kremlin control. The facts scream louder. Russians eat less now. Meat portions shrink. Bread gets scarce. The crunch of dwindling budgets echoes in homes. These details illuminate the Miami talks. That 28-point peace draft. It's Putin's desperate cry from the abyss. As his economy crumbles, he plays his final cards. Weakened before his people. This hush-hush Miami summit screams retreat. His own moves expose the lies. He terrified them with 1990s ghost stories. Starvation. Chaos. Now, he's resurrecting that nightmare. But who will rise against the tyrant? Wait. What if the hidden hunger ignites a revolution? Could this force Putin to kneel before Ukraine's strength, rewriting history in blood and broken pride? The endgame twists closer. Will the people see the truth, or fall like dominoes? Stay alert. The storm brews. Imagine the Kremlin towers looming like silent sentinels under a stormy sky, their golden domes echoing with unspoken fear. What if I told you Vladimir Putin, the iron-fisted ruler who vowed this so-called special military operation would end only on Moscow's terms, is now scrambling in secret desperation? For 3 agonizing years, Putin has snarled at the world, dismissing every Western peace offer as weakness. He barricaded himself in the Red Square fortress, spouting defiance, but reality bites harder than any frost. The brutal secret? One of his closest cronies, Kirill Dmitriev, was summoned like a thief in the night to bargain for surrender in sun-soaked Miami, USA. Picture the scene, glittering Miami sun reflecting off the ocean, waves crashing softly against luxury hotel piers. There, in a hushed ballroom scented with exotic cigars and polished leather, Dmitriev, the shadowy overlord of Putin's personal war chest, spent 3 torturous days locked in talks with Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff. Their voices low, papers shuffling like leaves in a storm. Whispered deals emerged, a 28-point blueprint for peace, dripping with compromises. But why now, amidst Putin's bluster of victory? The truth slithers out. Putin crouched at this table not as a conqueror, but as a beggar, clawing to avert his empire's total economic ruin. What nightmare drove him to this humiliation, leaving you on the edge, wondering if tonight marks the end of his reign charade? Dmitriev's whispers in Miami unveil a hidden terror, his sweat-streaked brow under chandeliers hinting at cracks in Putin's facade. To unravel this forced betrayal, gaze back at the oily heartbeat of Russia's plague, natural resources, where power and peril intertwine like barbed wire. Russia's economy pulses with the same deadly addiction as the shattered Soviet Union, oil and gas, flowing like black blood from Siberian veins. They fuel the military machine, keeping missiles gleaming and tanks growling, but expose a raw Achilles heel that history mocks. Putin, scarred by past collapses, knows the sting. The 1985 specter hovers, a phantom wheezing through Moscow's halls of power, reminding him of impending doom. Rewind to the mid-1980s, when the world oil stage shifted like a tectonic quake. Giants ruled, the Soviet Union, Saudi Arabia, the United States, Iran, their rivalries crackling in the air like ozone after a storm. The Soviets gorged on oil cash to prop up their colossal war machine, submarines humming in icy depths and planes slicing Arctic winds. But in 1985, Saudi Arabia struck, a masterstroke to reclaim dominance. They unleashed a deluge, production surging from 2 million barrels daily to 5 million, floodwaters of crude drowning markets. Oil prices tumbled wildly, halved in a dizzying spiral from late 1985 to early 1986. The Soviet coffers bled dry, ration lines stretching like endless shadows, soldiers hungry, defenses crumbling. This plunge hammered the final spike into their economic coffin, unraveling their superpower dreams into the abyss of 1991. Putin's DNA carries the scar, a burning fear now reignited into a modern inferno. Today's torment? Russian oil plunging below a perilous $36 a barrel. A dagger twist after initial resistance. Sanctions pinched like thumbscrews, caps strangling sales, global fears drying up demand. Once, amid upheaval, Russia hawked barrels at $65, dreams of wealth intact. Now, reports scream of desperation, prices cratering to $36, stripping $29 per barrel from Putin's grizzled grip. Feel the shock, $29 stolen per drum, echoing hollow thuds of lost gold. At 5 million barrels exported daily, Russia's average pulse, this hemorrhage's $145 million vanished each dawn, tallying a staggering $52 billion annually in sunken ships. Could Putin defy fate without bending in Miami's shadows, or does this gap herald his crowning disgrace, forcing a kneel not from strength but shattered ledgers, leaving nations breathless at the throne's wobble? Miami's betrayal exposed Putin's fraying lifelines, his backbone bending like a reed in the wind. Two fragile threads once held his defiance, China and India, eager buyers when the West barred the gates, and the Shadow Fleet, a murky armada built from rusty ghosts. The West slammed doors, but Putin pivoted, funneling oil east, tankers groaning across seas, fumes blending with salty spray. China and India gulped, engines rumbling in their ports, ties strengthening like forged iron. Yet, Russia's weakness whispered through the trade winds, buyers sensing blood, slashing purchases in ruthless culls. Bargaining chips slipped from his greasy palms, betrayal fueling their cold cash maneuvers. Next gambit, the Shadow Fleet. To dodge sanctions, Putin conjured this phantom navy, aged hulls, uninsured nightmares, braving perilous waves. They hauled crates through fog-shrouded nights, evading watchdogs. But sanctions evolved, fangs sharpening. Financial nooses tightened, secondary threats looming like thunderheads. Even Asian banks recoiled, cowering from Russian deals, their vaults slamming shut. Gazprom and Rosneft, titans of Putin's realm, gasped for air. Profits cratered, billions dissolving into mist. War chests emptied, numbers bleeding red. These pillars shattered, leaving Putin stranded, no shield from Peace's encroaching waves. What forsaken path did he tread next, a reckless envoy dispatched like a pawn into enemy jaws, as his empire teeters on the brink of eternal night? Putin's envoy choice screamed his dire plight across the Atlantic, a criminologist's delight in this twisted diplomacy. Dmitriev, 50, youthful yet battle-hardened, heralds America's echoes from years studying and scheming there. As Russian direct investment fund chief, he's the money launderer, deal spinner, bridging worlds with trades that taste of tainted sugar. Paired with Witkoff, a real estate baron and political shark, the meeting reeked of commerce, war reduced to haggling over dollars in smoke-filled rooms. Why Dmitriev, this risky bet? The U.S. Treasury branded him Putin's puppet, slapping sanctions on his fund, a notorious slush pit. Official words stung, a conduit for Putin's thievery, Russia's corruption incarnate. His wife's bonds deep in the web, Natalia Popova, glamorous TV fixture, buddies with Putin's daughter, Katerina Tikhonova. Dmitriev reeks of inner sanctum, familial ties binding like chains. Sending this lightning rod to Florida. Fraught with snares, screams no escape plan exists. And Dmitriev's bold claim? Russia's voice finally piercing, signaling Kremlin outreaches to Trump's camp, plotting an endgame shift away from current storms. Would Trump loosen the cords, granting Putin mercy in shadows, or unearth revelations to shatter alliances forever? Miami's clandestine blueprint unfurls Putin's veiled ambitions, a 28-point pact masking surrender as triumph. Not mere ceasefire, but a dance to mend frayed U.S.-Russia ties, soothe security jitters, even as occupied lands stay locked under Russian heels. Red lines etched sharp, annexed zones cemented forever, Ukraine's might pruned to shadows of weakness. Sanctions begone, trade barriers dissolving like morning dew. NATO's eastward creep halted, European arms shadowed in restraint. This document? Putin's victory mask, legally gilding thefts and fears. Yet, its existence betrays desperation. If economy roared, he'd scorn this whisper, craving battlefield crowns. Miami whispers defeats a rival, economy's fang-piercing war's hubris. What price will Ukraine pay for this betrayal, as Putin's facade crumbles, exposing a ruler ensnared by his own greed? Imagine, if you will, a world where the mighty ruler of Russia, Vladimir Putin, clings to his iron throne, spouting defiance like a mantra, vowing that his so-called special military operation will only conclude under Moscow's stern gaze. For 3 grueling years, he slammed the door on every Western olive branch, branding peace as a coward's whisper. But behind the Kremlin's fortified walls, a savage reality festers, one too grotesque to conceal. What if I told you that this unyielding tyrant, desperate to shield his crumbling empire, dispatched his closest confidant to a clandestine rendezvous in sun-drenched Miami? Picture the opulence of a luxury Florida hotel, where Kirill Dmitriev, often dubbed the kleptomaniac steward of Putin's secret coffers, huddled for 72 tense hours with Donald Trump's emissary, Steve Witkoff. From these shadowed dialogues emerged a sweeping 28-point blueprint for truce. Yet, this wasn't a genuine quest for harmony, it was a frantic bid to avert financial annihilation. Diving into Putin's covert impetus requires peering into the Kremlin's darkest economic scar, crude oil. Just as the Soviet Union did, Russia's fate hinges on gushing black gold and gas vapors. This is their dynamo of dominance, yet it harpoons them in the ribs whenever markets rage out of control. Who could fathom that history's specter from 1985 echoes through Moscow's sterile halls, taunting Putin like a relentless phantom? Back in the turbulent mid-1980s, the oil arena convulsed in upheaval. Titans like the Soviet Union, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Iran jostled for supremacy. The USSR propped up its colossal war machinery with dwindling oil dollars. Then, in 1985, Saudi Arabia unleashed a calculated blitzkrieg, flooding the world with excess crude. Their output soared from 2 million barrels daily to 5 million, drowning the market in glut. Prices halved by 1980 SIXS dawn, hammering the USSR's fragile treasury, starving its populace, and rendering military thunder unsustainable. This fiscal coup de grace accelerated the Soviet behemoth's 1991 implosion, a phobia etched into Putin's very marrow. And now, that same nightmare resurfaces. Where does this perilous spiral lead, you ask? Straight to the gut-wrenching $36 threshold that shattered Putin's bravado. Early in the conflict, he propped up oil values to fend off sanctions like a shield against arrows. But global tides shifted, slapping a price ceiling on Russian crude, tightening supply chains, and amplifying backlash. The excruciating truth slamming Dmitriev across the Atlantic? Russia's oil tumbled beneath that perilous floor. Without this plummet, they'd have pedaled at luxuriant $65 per barrel. Today, though, they scrape for $36, hemorrhaging $29 per unit, an excruciating rip from their coffers with every viscous spill. Factor in 5 million daily exports, and that's $145 million vanishing each dawn, ballooning to $52 billion annually. Could Putin have dispatched his ally to dodge another 1985 calamity sans surrender? For if that $29 chasm yawns wider, budget black holes will drag him to a truce that's nothing short of degrading. Yet, looming large, his lifelines crumble, companies like Gazprom and Rosneft teetering like ships in a maelstrom, while the shadow fleet he's banged together from rusty, uninsured vessels flounders. Putin pinned hopes on pivoting eastward, offloading to China and India after Western taps shut. But these giants sensed his frailty, slashing buys with predatory glee, eroding his leverage to dust. His alternative, that makeshift armada of hazardous tankers, dodging sanctions like smugglers in fog. Alas, fresh penalties erect barriers no ghost ship can breach, banking fears in Beijing and Mumbai now choke the flow. Gazprom and Rosneft cough up paltry profits, billions lost, vital to his war hoard. Both anchors for defying peace yanked away, Moscow's defenses lie in ruins, leaving only the underhanded card, Dmitriev's hush-hush mission. Ironclad proof of Putin's economic ruin, and thus the war's doomsday clock ticking loud. Layer in the war's voracious maw, gobbling $1 billion daily, over $360 billion yearly, and the tableau darkens fatally. That $52 billion oil shortfall, shrinking energy giants' gains, rampaging costs. Putin's ledgers scream bankruptcy. Behold the chasm between the facade he peddles to his masses, a stalwart saga, and the abyss beneath, an economic abyss dragging Russians toward catastrophe. His unspoken bargain with the populace shatters, fraying allegiance. When destitution shoved Putin to the brink, his pick for the perilous parley spoke volumes in subliminal code. Criminally savvy, Dmitriev's ascent, young at 50, steeped in American soil from studies and stints, signals utter desperation. Heading the Russian Direct Investment Fund, he's a financier, a dealmaker. Witkoff, a real estate baron and political shark, frames this as transactional haggling, even war reduced to commodities. But who is this figure, entrusted with such fraught gambit? In 2022, the U.S. Treasury branded him a Putin crony, sanctioning his outfit as a Kremlin's venal vault. Bluntly called, widely considered a slush fund belonging to President Vladimir Putin and a hallmark of Russia's kleptocracy. These Miami murmurs? Not mere diplomacy, but scrambling to safeguard Putin's riches and his cronies' gilded safety nest. Dmitriev, linchpin in the machine's core. Adding intrigue, his spouse Natalia Popova, a television star, bonds with Putin's daughter Katerina Tikhanova, weaving him into the familial web of power. Sending this incendiary envoy to U.S. soil for secret Ukrainian deals, braving tempests, screams no escape hatch. Dmitriev, oozing assurance these huddles outdo past flops, uttered a mind-blowing concession. We feel that Russia's position is truly being heard. Not boilerplate bomb, but Kremlin's overture to Trump's clique, scheming to sidestep Biden's vice and edge terms into a future administration. And what lurks in this shrouded 28-point charter? Aimed beyond Ukraine's quagmire, it seeks to mend frayed ties, soothe Russian fears. Echoing Putin's absolutes, annexed land cemented forever in Russia, a legal seal on conquest's booty. Ukraine's army scuttled to fragility, independence clipped. A reset for U.S.-Russia bonds, sanctions evaporate, Dmitriev and Putin's system's salvation. To revive a faltering fiscal corpse. Plus, total security oaths, NATO's eastward creep halted, deployments minimized in Europe, terms the West would spit out. This blueprint, sealing Putin's victory, boast in ink. But it betrays how dire his straits. Prosperous Putin never barters thus, he'd yoke peace to battlefield triumph. Miami, crucible where his military pipe dreams perish. For Ukraine, though, this covert conclave sends a shattering message, we're Americans toying with notions. But wait, does this unguarded summit hint at betrayal, leaving Kyiv isolated against imperial vultures? As cracks widen in Putin's armor, could rebel seize the void, turning tides with vengeance? Economic pincers tighten, forcing Russia's hand. What wild gambits await as allies' desert and resources dwindle? Will this Miami machination ignite global fuse or fizzle in the flames of scrutiny? Ponder the tremors rippling from that seaside symposium, a bear cornered, claws bared, but bleeding into submission.